Morning, Jaime.
Morning, Rabbi.
How are you?
Thank God. Baruch Hashem.
Morning. Okay,
And
so
you?
we're going to get ready to start the Gemara. Morning, everybody. Okay, we are on Boker Tov. We're on Yud Dal Lamed Beis. We are on 14b. Let's see, we're up to Lishna Achrina in the Gemara. So in the Art Scroll, it's 14. It's 14b. 14b1 on the right side. Everyone have it? Lishna Achrina. Lishna Achrina, the Gemara is bringing another lashon, a different text in the Gemara, in how the Gemara was trying to bring a proof to one of the rabbis. We had a machloket between Rav and Shmuel in understanding the machloket in the Mishnah. What did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah brings a machloket whether you could use boards as your schach. That is a machloket in the Mishnah where the boards could be used as schach. And we had Rav says that the dispute in the Mishnah is only if the boards have 4 tfachim. But if the boards are less than 4 tfachim, everybody holds it's kosher. And Shmuel says no. The argument is when there's not 4 tfachim, if the boards are not so wide. But if they're wide 4 tfachim, everybody holds it's a problem. If it's wide 4 tfachim, because if you could use such wide boards as your schach, you're going to come to use the ceiling of your house as schach. So that is the machloket between the two rabbis. Again, the machloket is, where is the argument? Are they arguing in the Mishnah by boards of less than 4 tfachim wide? But if it's 4 tfachim wide, everybody will agree it's a problem? Or no? They're arguing specifically on boards that are 4 tfachim wide. But if it's less than 4 tfachim, everybody would hold it as good. So comes the Gemara and says Lishna Achrina. We have a different language in explaining the Gemara. Lishna Achrina. Bishlama l'Shmuel. According to Shmuel, everyone have it? You have it that place? Bishlama l'Shmuel, the Amma b'she'ein ba'aba arba machloket. Shmuel that says, you have it, Jaime, we're on 14b1 on the right side. Max, you got it? Shmuel said that when there's no 4 tfachim, when the boards are less than 4 tfachim, between 3 and 4 tfachim, that's where there is a dispute. But if there is 4, if it would have 4 tfachim wide, everybody holds psula, it would be invalid. So my mitzarfim, so what does it mean when it says, when the Gemara uses the language of siruf, when the Braita talks about do you join or you don't join the boards together? So mitzarfim la'arba amot min hatzad. It's referring to the idea of joining four the boards to create a 4 amot min hatzad. As we explained, if you have not kosher schach that runs along the wall, if it goes up to 4 amot, you could say that the wall extends. We have this rule, the halacha called dofen hakuma, as we explained. It's right over here, in this ceiling over here. This would be a wall. Let's say that's be one of the walls of the sukkah. And if we cut a hole in the ceiling right over here, even though from the hole to the wall is not kosher schach, but as long as it's not more than 4 amot, we can see that wall extends to over here, correct? That's called the law of dofen hakuma. So when we say the word mitzarfin, it means the following: that when you have boards, if you would have boards that would be 4 tfachim wide, right? if it would be 4 tefachim wide, those boards would be not kosher schach, according to Shmuel in Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda would agree that if this would be 4 tefachim wide boards, it's a problem. It's not kosher schach. Therefore, they would join together to invalidate the sukkah, because you would have 4 tefachim boards, 4 tefachim boards, 4 tefachim boards, 4 tefachim boards, and if it's more than 4 amot of not kosher schach, you can't join that wall to over here. So therefore, he said, but if it's less than 4 tefachim, if it's less than 4 tefachim, so therefore it's technically kosher boards, because between 3 and 4 tefachim is kosher boards. So therefore, he says they don't join to damage, to invalidate, because they are less than 4 tefachim. If they would be 4 tefachim, they would join together. So that's why he uses the language of tziruf. They don't join together because each board. This is how the Marsha explains the Gemara. Since each board is not 4 tefachim, so therefore they have a status of what? Kosher schach. Kosher schach, so therefore they won't join to invalidate anything. The whole thing is kosher. But the Gemara says, Elul Rav, but Rav, who says that when there's 4 tefachim, that's where the machloket is. They're arguing only when there's 4 tefachim wide boards. But if it's less than 4 tefachim, there's no machloket. So Bishlam and the Rameya. So I understand, according to Rameya, my mitzdarfin. What does mitzdarfin mean? According to Rameya, because Rameya is saying 4 tefach board is a problem, and Rabbi Yehuda says it's not a problem. Mitzdarfin arba amos menatzah. The 4 tefach boards, mitzdarfin would mean that you would join. Each board is not kosher because it's a 4 tefach wide board. And if you're going to use a 4 tefach wide board for your sukkah, you're going to use your house ceiling of your house, the boards of your house. So therefore, when it says you're mitzdaref, you could join the boards together. It means you could take a 4 tefach board, 4 tefach board, and then they would join together to create a distance of 4 amot, more of not kosher schach, from the wall, and you can't say the wall extends. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, that filu according to Rabbi Yehuda, there's never a situation that there could be a possibility that these boards would join to make it not kosher. Because Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rav, holds a 4 tefach board is fine. So what do you tell me? What does it mean? My aim at Starfin, they don't join together, as if there's a case that there is a possibility of joining together, but this specific situation, they don't join together. If you tell me that boards are always kosher, it doesn't make a difference of size. Since they started, they grew from the ground, and they're separated from the ground, they're not makabel tuma. So what do you mean they don't join? There's never anything that could ever join. There's no size that could join. My image Starfin, according to him, these are all boards have a status like regular bamboo sticks. Because he considers boards, according to Rav's understanding of the machloket, the Rabbi Yehuda and Meir, Rabbi Yehuda looks at a board like bamboo. Just like it's like a reed. It's kosher schach. So what do you mean? What do you mean Eimit Sarfin? Kana ba'alma. It's regular reeds. So you're going to tell me, you know what? One reed doesn't join another reed to make a problem. Why should a reed join another reed to make a problem? Why should one bamboo? Where is the situation that it could make a problem? If you learn the Gemara, Marsha says, if you would learn like Shmuel, that Shmuel says that even Rabbi Yehuda would agree. When it's 4 tefachim wide, it would be a problem. And the only case Rabbi Yehuda says it's good is when it's a 3 tefach wide board. So then you say a 3 tefach wide board between 3 and 4, they don't join because they're not 4 tefachim. Because they're not 4 tefachim, if they would have been 4 tefachim, they would join to a problem. Because according to that understanding, a 4 tefach board, everybody would hold is a problem. But now that you said that everybody holds that even the Rabbi Yehuda holds a 4 tefach board is never a problem. So what's the word safin? Is it clear? What's the first thing again? Ellie? It's a very complicated point in the Gemara here, but I just want to. There's many ways how to explain this Gemara. There's a Marsha, there's a Pnei Yeshua, Maram. I'm going with I'm explaining the Gemara according to the Marsha's this is the Marsha's explanation. Okay, that is the Gemara. But Ellie, any question on this? Or should I explain it again? Think okay? So that's the Gemara's question. Why? What is? How do you? What? A language. Every word of the Gemara has meaning. There's no such thing as. And if a word doesn't fit, then there's a problem. And therefore, that's the Gemara's question. How do you use the word tziruf? How does Rabbi Yehuda say you don't join the boards together if the boards are just like considered like regular bamboo, a board of 4 tvachim? You can't say, and so you can't say they don't join together. What do you mean they don't join together? Of course they don't join together. They're like regular. If you say like the other opinion that says a 4 tefach board is a problem, and there's a possibility of joining boards together to create a problem. And the only reason why Rabbi Yehuda says it's kosher is because it's not 4 tefach board. So you could say, since it's not a 4 tefach board, they don't join together to cause a problem. Because if it would have been a 4 tefach board, it would join together. Because a 4 tefach board is not good, and then it would be invalid schach. So therefore, you could use the language by a 3 tefach board. Here, Max, a 3 tefach board, it doesn't join together because it's not. Because it's still kosher schach. Because there is a board that's not kosher, which would join together as a problem. So therefore, you can tell me in this circumstance they don't join together. But if you hold it, but according to Rav's understanding, it's all kosher schach, even if it's 4 tefach board. So what do you tell me they don't join together? It's regular kosher schach. So the Gemara answers, "Aidi de kama Rameya mitzdarfin, Amar Rabbi Yehuda a mitzdarfin." So the Gemara says the following. Really, you're right. Rabbi Yehuda should not use the word they don't join together. There's no issue. It's 100%. There's no case that ever it would join together. But since Rameir did use the language of joining together, Rameir says, well, we will join boards of 4 tvachim with boards of 4 tvachim. Rameir holds a 4 tefach board is a problem. So Rabbi Yehuda says, I say they don't join together. Even though there's never a case that they would join together. Even though he considers them like regular bamboo sticks. A 4 tefach board with the bamboo stick is the same thing in his mind. But since to Rameir, his colleague, who argues with, Rameir looks at a 4 tefach board as a problem. And 4 tefach boards would join together to create a problem. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda uses the language only because in context, because my colleague who argues says they do join together to create a problem. So I'll use the same language, they don't join together. But in truth, if you would ask me, the word they don't join together should not really apply because I look at these as regular schach, and there's never a situation that these type of items would join together. So the Gemara says, Tanya Kavasi de Rav, Tanya Kavasi de Shmuel. The Gemara now says we have a Breita like Rav and we have a Breita like Shmuel. Tanya Kavasi de Rav. And what's going to be the question? How do we understand the machloket of the Mishnah between Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Meir? Tanya Kavasi de Rav. We learned in a Breita like Rav. Sichacha ben Itzarim shel Erez. You went ahead and you covered the sukkah with boards made out of cedar, right? We just had in this week's parasha. We had an eitz erez, right? In the paraduma, you took a piece of cedar wood and you would throw it into the what? To the fire, together with hyssop, azov, and with also the red thread and hulat shani. And Rashi says, why did we throw in eitz erez? Eitz erez is the largest, it's the highest of all the trees, and therefore a person who is arrogant has to lower himself like a piece of grass. And so we take an item that represents eitz erez, the strong, tall tree, the cedar tree, and we take the small little grass, and we throw them in together to the paraduma, because that's where sin comes from. Arrogance. People that are full of themselves, that are very haughty, balagava, they gotta humble themselves, because that's the source of sin. Jaime, right? That's the pasuk. You're looking at the pasuk, right?
Yes.
How do you like that? And I'll tell you an original insight that I had on this pasuk. Eliam, with your original insight. It says you take two things that you throw in by the paraduma. It says three things, but two of them represent humility. One, you take a piece of low grass like hyssop, azo. And the second thing you take also, tolat shani, a little red, it's a red wool that it's called tolat shani. Tolat is a worm. So the idea of a worm, a person has to lower himself like a worm, lower himself like what? Like hyssop, like a little piece of grass. So my question was, why do we need two things to symbolize humility? The hyssop, the low grass, and the worm, and the tolat shani, which is called worm. Why do we need two things? And you have to, and we take the cedar wood, which is the high and mighty, and we put it together with those two items. Why do we need two items to represent humility? Why not one? Eli, you like the question? I wanted to say, because the Rambam says, a person does not just have to be humble. A person has to be exceedingly humble. It's not enough to be humble. If you say to some, he's a humble person, that might not be enough. You need to say he's exceedingly humble. As it says in Pirkei Avos, ma'od ma'od havishval ruach. You have to be a lot of humility in your life. You have to be very humble. Like Moshe Rabbeinu, anav ma'od, the pasuk. The Rambam says Moshe Rabbeinu is for all of us. Moshe was most humble of everybody else, but he was anav ma'od. He's exceedingly humble. Maybe that's why you need two items to represent humility. It's not enough. One. That's just an idea. You can think of your own answers for the question. Getting back to our Gemara. Tanya Kavos the Rav. Tanya Kavos Rav. Sichum Neson Shel Eretz. She'ein Be'em Arba. It did not have 4 tefachim. It is divrei hakol kasheira. Everybody holds it's kosher. If you use boards made out of the cedar wood that's not 4 tefachim, everybody holds that it's kosher. This is the opinion of Rav's understanding of the machlokas. This is a breita that supports Rav. Yesh ben arba, but if it has 4 tefachim, that's where the argument is. Do we say that since the common board of a house, of a ceiling of a house is 4 tefachim, so therefore if you make a board for your sukkah 4 tefachim, people are going to mistakenly say if you could use a board for your sukkah 4 tefachim, you're going to come to use the board of your house or not? Yish and Abba, Meir posel, Rabbi Yehuda machshir. Meir says it's pasul, and Rabbi Yehuda says it is kosher, even if it's a 4 tefach board. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda supports his opinion. I say that you can have Rabbi Yehuda says you can have a 4 tefach board, no problem. No problem. You could use you want to make boards, 4 tefach boards for your sukkah, for your schach, no problem. And he says, Ma'isa b'shas sakana. There was a story during a time period that the non-Jewish people, government, made a decree that the Jewish people cannot keep mitzvot. By the way, the Sukkah was one of the mitzvot that the Greeks told us that we're not supposed to keep. I think that's why it's also brought down that 8 days of Hanukkah is also corresponding to the mitzvah of Sukkah. There is a connection to the mitzvah of Sukkah. Sukkah is 7 days, 7-day mitzvah, but there is the discussion about how they stopped us from keeping mitzvah of Sukkah. So here is the Rashi doesn't identify which time period in our history, but there was a story in the time of Sakana. Sheivanu Nisarim, we brought boards. We bought boards that we wanted to do the mitzvah of Sukkah, and we needed to camouflage it, that the non-Jewish community, the government shouldn't realize that we're doing Sukkah. So what did we do? We took boards that are the similar cypress board size that we use for our ceiling of our house, and we used those boards for schach. We made boards that so they wouldn't realize that we're making a sukkah, because they would think it's like that's the same way you make a house. These are the four the 4 tefach boards used for your ceiling of your house. So that's what we did for our sukkah. And we went ahead and we made it on top of by the porch. And we sat under those boards. So we see from there that you could use a board that's 4 tefach wide. Because if a 4 tefach wide board was not good, how would they have used such a sukkah, made such a sukkah if it was not a kosher sukkah? The fact that they made this type of sukkah is a proof that a 4 tefach board is good, it's kosher. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says therefore Rabbi Yehuda says there is no concern if you use boards, 4 tefach wide boards, b'yischach, the people are going to think you could use your boards of your house. So Amru lo. So the rabbis shot back and they said no proof. Misham raya. You want to bring a proof from that case? Ein shat hasakana raya. The time of sakana cannot be a proof. Meaning to say, it could be that really rabbinic, the whole issue of having a sukkah with schach, that's 4 tefach wide schach, what's the issue? It's a rabbinic concern. It's a rabbinic gezerah that if you're going to use schach that are 4 tefach wide boards, people might come to use the what inside of your house. But in a case of sakana, we have no other way to fulfill the mitzvah unless you use 4 tefach boards. So the rabbis put aside their rabbinic zerah, their rabbinic decree. They said in such a case, like sometimes you have something called b'mokem choli lo goda, but sometimes in certain case of sickness, the rabbis were lenient. There's certain things. So in the case of sakana, when it's a question of danger where you couldn't fulfill the mitzvah in any other way, so the rabbi said you could use a 4 tefach white board. But in a case when there's no danger, maybe the rabbis would not allow a 4 tefach white board. So you can't prove from a case of sakana to a normal, ordinary case. Tanya kavote de Shmuel. Now the Gemara says, we learned in a Braita that supports Shmuel. Succah b'nisam shel ered. You went ahead and you covered the sukkah with boards, cedar boards. Good morning, Mr. Silverman. We are on 14b2 on the right side. Succah b'nisam shel ered. You went ahead and you covered your sukkah with the cedar boards. But sheyesh behen arba'ah. But the size of the boards were 4 tvachim wide. So divrei hakol, everybody holds sula, that it's invalid. Why is it invalid? Because it's a 4 tefach board. That's the normal size of a house board for your house. Therefore, everybody agrees it's a problem. You can't use such a board for your sukkah because people will make a mistake and they'll come to think you can use your ceiling of your house for sukkah. Ein ben arba, when it's not 4 tvachim wide, Rabbi Meir posel, Rabbi Yehuda mashir. Rabbi Meir says it is pasul if it's not 4 tefach wide, and Rabbi Yehuda mashir. So meaning to say, the argument between the rabbis is between Tanaim is between 3 tefach and 4 tefach wide boards. That's where they argue. But by 4 tefach wide board, it's no good. Now, Umod Rameya, who is more strict, and Rameya who says that even a 3 tefach wide board is a problem. We saw one reason why is the 3 tefach wide board problem, because there's a minority of homes that use for their ceilings a 3 tefach, a 9 to 12 inch board. Because there's a minority of homes that use such a board, he's concerned for the minority, and therefore he says you can't use such a board for your sukkah. That's why he says a 3 tefach board wide is a problem. But nevertheless, Rameh is modeh. Rameh admits, if between each board you have kamali neser, you have the size of a board between each board. We're going to explain this in a moment. Let's say a board is even a board that's 4 tefach board, which Rameh says a 4 tefach board is a problem, right? Rameh says a 4 tefach board is a problem. But if you fill the space, let's say you have the wall, of the sukkah, and then you have a 4 tefach board, and then you put 4, then you have a space 4 tefach, empty space, you put kosher schach, and then you put another 4 tefach board, and then you put again kosher schach, and then you do that on the other side also. You do that if you look at the picture in the art scroll. You have the art scroll picture on the bottom, number 17, number 18 on the bottom. That board, you see it says 4. You see the number, the letter, the numerical 4? That means it's 4 tefach wide. It's a 4 tefach wide board. Good morning. And if you put that 4 tefach wide board, and then, now that's not kosher schach, according to Rameya. But then you went ahead and then you put 4 tefach of pesel. Pesel is kosher schach. You put 4 to kosher, and then you put 4 tefach not kosher. And then you put 4 tefach of kosher. And then you started on the other side. Again, you did one board, 4 tefach, no good, no, not kosher. And then you did it at 4 tefach kosher. That's the space in between is all space. The spaces that in between the boards are kosher schach. Make believe they're bamboo branches in between. So, and what you have at the end, what you have is in the middle, you have 2 spaces of 4 tvachim, good morning, 4 tvachim and 4 tvachim. So you have in the middle 8 tefach of kosher schach in the middle. The size of a sukkah, what is the minimum size of a sukkah? 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim. The minimum size of the inside area has to be 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim. You hear that, Max? And if you left in the middle 8 tvachim of kosher schach, so then we say dofen akuma. We say that the wall, the side walls will go to the middle on each side, each wall on each of the sides of the not kosher schach will extend to the end of that not kosher schach, and then it will leave you in the middle with 8 tvachim of kosher schach, and it's like an imaginary wall on each side of the kosher schach, because there's no dalan amot. But let's say an amma has 6 tvachim. An amma has 6 tvachim. So if in the picture on the right side you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got 5 times 4 is 20. So you got 20. The wall will come to 20 tvachim on this side. The wall will expand 20 to 20 tvachim on the other side. And then you have 8 tvachim in the middle of kosher schach. So that's what he says. Moder Rameya. She'im yesh bein neser leneser. If you have between each board, each not kosher board, so to speak, each not kosher schach, but the schach was 4 tvachim. You have kimole neser. You have the size of a board of kosher schach. Shemaniach pesal b'neihem. You put kosher schach in between ukshera, and then the sukkah is kosher. You'll only be able to use that middle empty area, that middle space. That will be considered a kosher sukkah. Umode Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda now brings the case that Rabbi Yehuda would be strict in the laws of the boards. Umode Rabbi Yehuda who holds that if you have a board that's less than 4 tvachim, you could go ahead. That's a proper sized board you could use for schach. If it's less than 4 tvachim, it's less than, let's say, 12 to 16 inches wide. But im nosan aleh neser shurachav arba tvachim. If you went ahead and you put a board that is wide 4 tvachim, so a board that's wide 4 tvachim is similar to the boards of your house, and he would hold that that's not called kosher schach. It's invalid. You can't use such a size board. So if you put that board, let's say over here was open area, open space, it was kosher schach over here, but instead it was less than 4 tvachim throughout the sukkah. But if you put something that's 4 tefachim right over here, you put a board that's 4 tefachim wide over here, he would say that it's not kosher schach. You can't sit under that. You can't sit under that not kosher. If it's wide 4 tefachim. But the sukkah, but it doesn't invalidate the sukkah because it's near the wall. And since it's near the wall, we say dofen akuma. We say the wall will go ahead and extend to the end of that not kosher schach. You see, if this piece of schach, if this 4 tefach wide board will be right in the middle of the sukkah, like you see that picture over here, if there'll be just one board in the middle of the sukkah, that board would split the whole sukkah in half. If you have a 4 tefach wide board of not kosher schach, that could invalidate. If you have a 3-wall sukkah, it would split it in half, and you have no more 3 walls on each side. You only have 2 walls on each side. But being that this 4 tefach board is not in the middle of the sukkah, where is this 4 tefach board, like that board adjacent to the wall? So then we say that wall curves, and therefore it would be make believe there's no other. The only board that's here is one board next to the wall. Then it would be kosher. You can't sit under that because the 4 tefach wide. It's not kosher schach. Ve'ein yeshenim tachtav. You can't sleep under that board. You can't eat under that board, but it has a status of not kosher schach. V'hayoshen tachtav lo yotzi dechavotto. It's not just that it's lechatchila. You shouldn't sleep under that board that's 4 tefach wide. Rather, if you went ahead and you slept on that board that's 4 tefachim wide, you did not fulfill your obligation of sukkah. You can have a situation that the sukkah itself is kosher. The rest of the sukkah is kosher. But this part of the sukkah is not a kosher part. You can't sit in that spot of the sukkah. But that spot of the sukkah, the schach is too wide. It's not kosher schach, and it's 4 tefachim wide. It's not kosher. I want to wish everyone will be back tomorrow. Should we do regular time tomorrow? What works for Max, Ellie? Any preference on time tomorrow? Morning, Mr. Rapper. So I think morning, good to see everybody. So meanwhile, we'll do regular time, Mr. Silverman, tomorrow. Is that good? 6:45. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi Tom. Sorry I was late. Thanks,
Thank you for being on. Thank you. Thank you all.